Drake on Passive Show. Yeah. What a time we've got today scheduled for you, Dr. Drake. Good afternoon. Today is October 18th, 2022, and we have a special guest that I am really excited about listening to her story and finding out a little bit more about her. We had her on our show on Saturday, and I would like to bring her to the stage right now with no further ado. Let me bring to the stage Dr. Deborah Drake. Come on down, Dr. Deborah.
Hey, nice to see you, Milo.
Hey, how are you? Let's see.
Oh, always great to meet another musician across the way.
Dr. Drake, I tell you, it's a breath of fresh air. When I heard you talk that, I think it was a Thursday night or something on the very first show, and you were talking to Ash, and it just made my heart feel so good. And I'm so happy that you decided to join us today. But listen, on the ONPASSIVE Milo show, we want to know a little bit more about Dr. Drake. So what I would like to do is have you give me, where you're from, your family, what type of family you was born into. Take about 3 minutes and do that for us, please.
Sure. I was born into a fantastic family. My mom and dad were married in 1947 and had 6 kids, all musicians. My mother's a barber shopper, a singer in the 4-part barber shop. She's a baritone. So I listening to her put on stage makeup in her life and singing strange melodies. So I always learned the counterpoint to the main melody, if you will. My father was not as musical as his father. My grandfather invented the player piano rolls, where they punch the little holes and it would go over the rolling. So he used to sit me on his lap and say, here's all those keys moving around. And I thought I was playing, of course, but he was pumping down below. So I did take some music lessons when I was a kid till grade 2 theory, I think it was. Then I joined the school band and played the trombone with my brother on the trumpet. We came home and we became the first family to run the folk mass of the Catholic diocese in Toronto. My sister was the guitar player, and so we brought the folk mass to the Catholic Church. And my dad was an usher in that church for 44 years. Unfortunately, he died in the church under the Holy Cross. Well, he was across the street from me, and I came to his rescue. And when he died, he actually had severe mercury poisoning and celiac disease. And I was studying those 2 things in my career at the time. And I found out that I was a celiac and I was suffering a lot of mercury poisoning. And so I started really looking into detoxification medicine more than, a couple decades ago, 1999 around. And I've been really interested in health all my life. I was an athlete as a young girl. And my father taught me to be a baseball catcher in grade 3. And I went all the way up to, 18 years old as a catcher in the, softball leagues. So I was trained by my brothers to fight on the hockey rink, on the football field. I was sort of raised to be tough as my brothers and as musical as my sisters and as gracious as my mother. And sort of all of that led to me becoming a doctor with a good heart and really studied hard to get my professional degrees. And so that's where I think you sort of got an idea that I'm sort of an active person who has a good mind and a very curious mind.
That is awesome, man. And you hit some beautiful points that I love. I want to go back to did you tell me that your grandpa invented the player rolls, like the rolls that go on the piano? No.
Absolutely. I have one right here. Actually, can you imagine that in the past we used to do manual roll scrolling off the piano. I don't know if you can see that, with all these little holes on it.
Yeah.
Each one of those holes is a different frequency, and how long you held the note is how long the hole went over the roll, right? I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah,
it's
I
kind of
can
hard
see
on that screenshot. But
it's
you can
kind of
see
hard,
that
but
this was an arduous, a work of love and a lot of time involved, right?
Absolutely. I've seen those. I've seen the old player pianos. I've always been intrigued by them. I've seen them play and stuff.
Yeah. And
So
that was the beginning of digital medicine, where you had frequencies and lengths of the frequency time weighted averages on different notes of the piano, with the little hoses behind each key to give the air shot as it's going across. And this became the basis of MP3 recorders.
Right. I was going to say the digital recorders, now that they have on pianos, they just play. The piano will actually play the notes and everything. Exactly. And that was the precursor to that.
And if you played this in real time, it would be equivalent to a wave file today, but then the digital world compressed all the spaces out of it into an MP3, and it
Right.
lost about 70% of its value in that the spaces and syncopation between the space is where a lot of the universal energy and healing energy lies. And so we have to realize that musicians who play analog instruments or instruments back in 432 hertz, which match the periodic table of elements more closely, these are the people who get more relaxing music and charge up the minerals in your body because you're in concordant vibration with the periodic table of elements, which matches the piano.
Oh, wow. I
Did
never
you know
realized.
that? 54 keys on the piano match the 54 elements on the periodic table that foster life in humans.
Wow. So now let me ask you this. Does that mean that if I'm playing a Steinway grand versus playing a keyboard, there's a difference?
Definitely. And the strings of analog instruments are sine waves,
Okay.
but the same representation or facsimile of a sine wave could be made in many small squares that add up to the look of a sine wave. So that would be digital medicine approximating the sine wave curve.
Oh, wow.
Now in medicine, you can change the sine wave curve to sawtooth, and it can saw the edges of a bacteria and break its wall and kill it. So sine waves are smooth and relaxing. Sawtooth waves can cut with destructive interference and cut negative frequencies out of the body.
Wow. Okay, let's save some of that. Let's move on. So you told me about a lot of the interesting things you've done. You grew up playing hockey. You played softball. Man, all of those are so cool. And your hobbies. So now I'm assuming your hobbies are probably medicine and music. Is that correct?
Well, my profession is medicine, and my hobby is music and nature photography and videography and composing music. I'm trying to learn how to become a recording engineer. So I filled my living room here with all recording equipment to learn how do I capture some of these things. And, I'm trying to learn, like, I really do like the idea that we now could record spontaneously what we're composing on the moment. You're a composer. You love to jazz and jam it up and not ever play the same thing twice, just like I do, I believe.
Yes, I do. I mean, to me, music is can take, you can be feeling however you're feeling, and you can play music and change it. And I
It does.
remember as a young guy, especially more so than now, if I had a bad day, I would not walk by the piano. I would sit down at the piano and I'd play me three, four songs. And it might not have the same meaning as it did the day before because of what I was feeling, but I always try to put that feeling into it. So you are exactly
Absolutely.
right on the music and stuff. I love it.
On that note, I was an emerge doc in Boston, San Francisco, Detroit, and I saw so many traumas and young people on crack cocaine or AIDS patients, and they were zipping up in the body bags. They were zipping up a half a dozen a day. I would come home and play in the E minor key of the blues, later finding out that all those notes were very close to the frequencies that heal the liver and the anger in you and the frustration. And I've got stuck on writing 20 songs in the key of E minor till I got over my anger. So it was therapeutically correcting the negative emotions that I was taking at work. So I have found that music is as therapeutic as medicine, and probably is even better than it if we could just focus and harness it, which is what I specialize in now in bioenergetic medicine, where we harness the music to each body part and try and tune a person up.
That's amazing. So, Dr. Drake, this brings us to the main reason we're here, is to talk about ONPASSIVE. Tell us, what has ONPASSIVE did for you? What hopes? What does ONPASSIVE mean to you?
Well, I don't want to get too complex or political, but there is a sense that the world is on a tilt, and that the old methods that we're using in medicine are costly and inefficient and sometimes risky. The number one cause of death in America is, heart disease and cancer, but the number three cause is doctors and allopathic iatrogenic mistakes. So I started getting very wise to the idea that some of the things I was doing were not as safe or desirable as might be. And one particular day, one of my friends, I was at a convention with one of my girlfriend's sons, He was I won't offend him, but he was a holy terror of ADHD, running around convention floors, setting things on fire, allergic, outrageous kid, right? And some lady put him in his chair and said, I can heal your guy. I cannot heal him, but I can balance him out in an hour. Give me a chance. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? And she said, with a music mixer. So my ears perked up and I went, okay, how's that possible? She found that this child was full of mercury poisoning and neutralized it out of him. And the next day, this child was polite, sitting in his chair, totally intelligent, a complete personality switch overnight. It blew my mind, right? I'm kind of going, how did she do that so quickly? So I realized that the slow boat of chemical medicine could be eclipsed if we went to digital medicine, where you could give prescriptions of musical tones to balance. So wherever somebody was high and inflamed, we would give them the opposite, debit to the credit, and collapse to zero. Or if they had cancer and they were low in minerals, we would broadcast the minerals into them and bring them up back to the middle. So every time we kept bringing people to the middle point, they seemed to balance and get over themselves and get on the way to their merry life. So I started really looking into medicine this way after being an emergency doctor, trauma doctor, a researcher, a clinical instructor. I was doing psychotherapy for 25 years, family medicine for 20. And then I went and saw this conference with this young boy. I bought one of these biofeedback devices and I went over to Budapest and trained with the inventor and stayed on the Blue Danube and wrote my first textbook and my PhD in bioenergetic medicine there. And I learned that you could do everything that I wanted to do in medicine through the digital frequency impression of those same fingerprints. So people started sending me the most complicated people in the world. The people with, deafness would suddenly 45 minutes later start crying because they start hearing again. Or the people with autism who couldn't speak, suddenly after 4 or 5 sessions of me clearing out their vocal cords or putting in dopamine in their body, they'd start speaking again. So then I'm thinking, well, is there anything this just won't work on? I mean, I'm talking, I've tried it on the most outrageous things, including, one lady in a hotel room had a cocaine overdose in front of me, and I broadcast Narcan, the reverse of drug overdose, and she woke up from the dead. So I started realizing that if we could harness this in a much more specific, selective way, then maybe we could teach others about what I know in medicine translated into music. So I started 3 different times. I've started up the Institute of Quantum Medicine, then Harmonize Your Health. Then I started up the Coach Zippy Health Counts Academy. And every time I kept trying to build my classes online, something would come along and knock me off my shirt. The College of Physicians didn't like what I was doing, so they shut down my website. They shut down my practice, which ended up ruining my marriage. My house, my insurance was lost. I had no income. I was living, I lost my car, my spouse, everything was lost when they said, you may not do this bioenergetic medicine. You must stick to the allopathic medicine. Well, after about 10 years and 438 committees and letters, and, it was just brutal. I finally said, I cannot continue to keep on that corrupt path. There's got to be, the truth is shining through in a better way. So I resigned my medical license and I went in to get my my Ayurvedic license in Ayurvedic herbology, Chinese acupuncture, doctor of osteopathy. And then I got my PhD in coaching license in bioenergetic medicine. Then I won some awards like the Woman on Fire Award for biotechnology as an innovative technology. Then I won the Doctor of Humanitarian Medicine Services Award from my university, the World Organization of Natural Medicine. So these people started re-infusing me with the confidence that I was really on the right track, and I was going for the truth, and the truth shall set you free. But I couldn't get anybody to really find out about me without social media. And so there's no way for doctors of natural medicine to get paid. So I started going to courses, and I ended up buying like 360 softwares. How do you make a list? What's a funnel? How do you do a landing page? What's a cart? How do you do a promotion? What's social media? I had no social media skills at all or any understanding. So I started going deep in the rabbit hole, realizing, for heaven's sakes, this is as complicated as medicine. You have to have the exact surgical precision to get the thing done, or nobody shows up in your funnel and nobody makes any money at the end of the day. So after 3 years of trying this, I really pretty much never made a cent, because I didn't have a list or know how to get out to the world. And I was so busy trying to see patients, it's hard to run a whole social media empire while you're trying to do your day job, right? I know you know that.
Yeah.
It's always juggle, juggle, juggle. So then I heard about ONPASSIVE through a friend, Francesca Horbe and Margaret Mead, and they said, you know, this is all under one roof. You don't have to have these 360 softwares and sign-ins driving you crazy. So I was attracted to the singular sign-in and the 50 tools that ONPASSIVE was offering, because I knew through my studies that you really did have to have 17 steps towards success. It wasn't just, hey, I got a product, hey, it's success. You had to plan it, post it, advertise it, get people in, give them something for free, let them find who you are, get to know, like you, and trust you. I mean, it was really quite a kind of an uncomfortable lessons for me, not something that I'm very good at or think that I'm good at. But slowly over time, my confidence rose that if I just keep doing what I love, the tools will make it easy for me to get out there. So I started trying to merge the bioenergetic medicine into ONPASSIVE. And suddenly 2 years into it, Ash decides that he's going to now go fiber optic on us. Where I'm teaching fiber optic medicine for 20 years, he says, now let's bypass the 5G risks, come in on a satellite, go into a hybrid data center, and have it encrypted so nobody's cheating, blocking, suppressing us, interfering with us, so that we can have a fresh new start in medicine and the delivery of medicine. So now I'm thinking, okay, I can't see 1 million people in my office one by one, but I can send out a musical tune that could go viral. So I could take my tablet here, for instance, and I could put on here a viral song about pumping up your mitochondria and longevity and fix your DNA repair. And let's pull out the heavy metals out of you with that song. And now my own energy could come up and I could export that song to somebody else, which is the quantum cap. I was just teaching all afternoon on that, on how you could export that song to a media player on your phone, and you could listen back to that quantum music that says brainwave balance, chakra balance, meridian balance, organ detox. You could clean yourself up from home. Wow. So that's where we stand today. Is I've got 5 years of recorded webinars that I put together to make a cyber university. And the day I was about to launch it in September, they asked me for $2,700 for the year to run the back office. And without the students coming in the office open, you're stuck where there's no income to pay for the services. So ONPASSIVE comes along and says, I'll send you the traffic. I'll make you a suite that you can soar on, and you can self-design and customize. And I'm going to give you a protected auto-responding email service so that I could track and analytically analyze and do the social media, representation of sending good music around the world and good medicine. So now, instead of me working in my own little tiny cocoon here, I have a chance to tap it out there into the world through the avenue of this incredible ONPASSIVE, what I call like the world's, rocket ship ride to, the light years ahead in medicine. You're going to be the light years ahead in social media.
Wow. This is crazy. I know that I had you on the show Saturday and I loved it and said, I'm going to support you. Now, some things I didn't know before that I know now is, when you talk about the digital, and you probably said it, I just missed it, about the digital, my mind goes into spinning mode about, okay, now we have something. ONPASSIVE is something that will targeted traffic, bring people in. So people that need help with their medicines or whatever, it brings them into your funnel. Now you could, at that point, we could design a website or whatever that will send out these digital things, whether you charge for them or whether you don't, but you will have these little files that you can send out 212 countries around the world, billions of people, not millions, but billions of people. And just think of the good that that's going to do. What you're doing for the world is incredible, because now, people can be healed, people can change, I'm sure that people that are, off there kind of lost it or messed up, whether they're wanting to go out and shoot someone or something like that, I'm sure that some of this stuff will affect that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There isn't a single person I found who wasn't toxic at some level. Some are little toxic, some are massively toxic. And the personality disruptions and the addictions and the pain and the suffering that goes on, the longer we leave people unattended and neglected, the worse it gets. So we really need, you know, the fact that we can send remote information to you on your cell phone, and you could now take a recipe from me and listen to it on your earbuds 2 or 3 times a day, then this is going to increase compliance without the side effects and the negative adverse reactions, because you know, music is not going to hurt you. But then you're grooming and grooming the muscle, the musical muscle, the mental muscle, the physical immune muscle, so that people are more resistant to disease. And we're not making any claims or cures or prevention of disease or anything, except to say that when your body is a stress detector and it finds there's an alarm in the house, if you don't attend to the alarm, you keep getting these signals to the brain that are distracting. What if we could stop the alarms and the poisons and the toxins and the infections and the travelers, parasites, or food poisoning, and then your alarm bells go off so you can actually use your brain for something constructive?
Right.
Most people are just treading water. I'm telling you, there's a lot of suffering going on.
I'll tell you something that I kind of got into and kind of checked out was I used to play a lot for the elderly. I love the elderly. And I would go to nursing homes and I would play in assisted living. And I remember one day in particular, I would always play the old gospel hymns or the old country songs.
Love it.
And they all loved them. And after the show, I would always walk out in the crowd, usually be 150 or so there, and talk to them. And they didn't realize that they were giving me a lot of energy back. It wasn't that I was getting a lot from them. But I remember one day in particular, I had 2 songs left to go, and I said, I'm gonna sing I Come to the Garden Alone. And I started singing I Come to the Garden Alone. And I seen a nurse walk over to a little lady that had been just shaking her head. You know, I'd seen her for 4 or 5 years. She never said a word. She just go blah 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 blah. That's all she did, you know. And she had dementia, not dementia, Alzheimer's. She had Alzheimer's, and so this particular day, I started singing, and one of the nurses went over, and she looks, and all of a sudden, she starts motioning the nurses, and pretty soon you had 10 nurses around this little lady, you know. I didn't know what was going on. So I finished up my show. I sang How Great Thou Art. And as I walked out through the crowd, the nurse come up to me and I said, Julie, I said, what the heck was going on? She says, you know, and I can't remember the name, but she said, you know, she's never said nothing since she's been here. And she said, when you started singing, I Come to the Garden Alone, she sang every word of it perfectly.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, there's something to music, you know, when that will trigger something. Now, as soon as I was done singing that, she was back to blah 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 blah. You know, but I thought to myself, if for 3 minutes I could get that person's life back, and I started doing research on it, and that's what I found out is that it does. Older music or something will trigger something in that, you know. And it even had a thing where there was one guy on there that hadn't spoke for years, and he was an Alzheimer patient,
Mhm.
and they started playing some kind of music, old music that he was accustomed to, and now he's just fine, you know.
Yeah.
So there is something to music if you hit it right. And I don't know, it
I
sounds
think
like
you're so right on. You are
you're
so
on it.
right on. The speech area of the brain is different than the musical reception area. And the frontal medial cortex of music is really connected to creativity, of course, right? But there's some people who have had half their brain crushed, but still could have these perceptions. So the brain is somewhat of an incredible set of plasticity, as they call it, that if you subject people to music, the dendrites can branch, just like if you feed them good spices like turmeric makes your dendrites branch. And keeping the brain connectivity together without poisons and toxins in it is really a critical thing for our next generation, because the baby boomers are now all hitting 60, 70, 80, 90, right? And so we're going to have a lot of younger people who don't know how to take care of a very elderly, sick population if we don't start sort of meeting in the middle here.
Mm-hmm.
And music does create not only, I wanted to mention something that you find really fascinating. my mother used to have parties where all her musician friends would bring their clarinets and their guitars, and the kids would be in the basement, and there'd be a band roaring around our grand piano. And there's one particular musician who studied with the whales, and he found out that the whales sing, get this, in syncopated beat. And it's not the downbeat, but it's the space of syncopation that is highly, highly intuitively intelligent. And those exact ratios or syncopated intervals are super communicative for those. So when you're talking about living in New Orleans and you're playing in these jazz clubs and they're syncopating beats and they're mixing all this, you're literally in a soup of beautiful medicine, musical medicine. And these kind of things we need to maybe explore a bit more to see if we could get, just having elderly people drumming would make their left hand talk to their right hand, and they connect the brain hemispheres. There'd be more connectivity. I must tell you that the last 5 lectures, I'm just finishing a lecture last night that's about to air for the World Organization of Natural Medicine. Their annual Congress is on the 28th and 29th of October. And my speech was called Minerals, Music, and Magnetism. If you don't eat good food and you don't have good minerals to grab the light coming in from the source energy, your body falls apart because there's no bolts and nuts and bolts to hold the body together with these minerals. So we're really back to the New Orleans music and the New Orleans medicine in its food combining is actually keeping the population happier and healthier. I would predict. I don't know if that's true.
Wow. I mean, everything you've said today is just so amazing. And, and I think it fits so well with ONPASSIVE,
It does.
When you talk about what you're trying to do, that's all about helping humanity, and that's all about growing this. And we talked on my show, and I'm supporting you or whatever. We're going to put together some kind of website that people can join and can help you, and help you do whatever you have to do. So you don't have to worry about funding. You don't have to worry about money. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be there for you to use your brain to do whatever you need to do. And I can't wait for that day to come. And a lot of times I say on our show, I say, ONPASSIVE is kind of like it's an orange. I tell the story of an orange. How many oranges can an orange create? Well, the truth of it is it's infinite, because depending on how many seeds are in that orange, each seed makes a tree, and each tree makes a whole lot more oranges. This is what happens with ONPASSIVE. And the beautiful thing of it, say we get a project like yours, which I know there will be tons of people that want to support this, that want to do it. So what happens if one person, myself or a couple people, we buy into this and we put a spot underneath you, we buy a reseller spot under you, and then we start we got friends that need help, or we find out that someone's got some kind of disease and maybe they need to help, or maybe it's someone that's deaf and we want to check it out, see if and we give them a spot. Now all of a sudden we're creating more funding for you to be able to bless all of us, and at the same time we're able to bless more and more. And it's a beautiful thing of humanity.
It's so synergistically positive. It's actually elating to a person like me who's been in the trenches digging and scratching. And the fact of the matter is that we shouldn't be monetizing people's health.
Absolutely.
It's a right to life and liberty, and we shouldn't be using it as a chattel against them.
Right.
And so if you, for instance, say, well, Deb, I got a real buzz off of the O-Tech guy named Collins. He just, I don't know, something about him and me.
He's a great guy.
He's just so bright, right? And he's so exuberant. So at the end of your show, he says, I hope you'll upload some of your courses on us. Well, I would like to upload my whole, I'm not kidding, Milo. I've got like 7 hard drives here of 10 terabytes of my speeches, but they're sitting there rotting, doing nothing because I don't know who to send it to. Well, what if I could donate my library to ONPASSIVE, and everybody who uses the library puts $5 into Obless, and we create a great big fund of positivity, and that money could be used to maybe put in a clinic somewhere that's desperate, or buy these biofeedback devices and put them in elderly homes, or put them in sports teams, or, just like every week we're coming up with a new game. Like this week, it's O Games. I want to have a health game where everybody goes up my squash ladder of the 12 organs, and whoever gets the healthiest by the end of the year, they get some monetary reward. We could tokenize you getting yourself healthy. Can you imagine that?
It's awesome.
I
That
think
is
that
so
could be
awesome.
absolutely outrageous, right?
I love that, and I do, the way, however we fund it, whether we do it through Old Bless or, if a person comes in, they buy a spot, hey, they get that library, get access to that library. That
Exactly.
would be another way.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think if you're funded, what will happen is traffic starts coming into your funnel, and all of a sudden you get all these people coming in underneath you, and you start getting the commissions and stuff. You're not going to have to worry about money. And that's a beautiful thing because you're passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
But the truth of it is, you got to live too. You got to get something. And this is a beautiful way to make it happen. But you're blessing us at the same time we can bless you,
Exactly. It's a mutual
Incredible thing.
admiration society. Like a mutual exchange is what a good contract is. Not where somebody dominates you, commands you,
Yeah.
and mandates you against your will, but something that's universally, I'm putting my equal effort in. I say this to my athletes. I take care of some triathletes and Olympians. And if they're not working as hard as me, you're off my team. You got to be working as hard as me, because I'm not going to give you it anymore because you don't appreciate it.
Yep.
It's not that I
Absolutely.
haven't tried to. Believe me, I've
Yeah.
given a lot of stuff to dead ends, streets where people are either too toxic, sick, or unmotivated to receive it. But I feel that if we could send them the detoxification codes early, their brains would become clear enough to realize what they need, and they might participate with more compliance and motivation to get involved, because they're just so darn tired and sick and toxic, they can't get out of bed to go do half of the things or have the money to afford half of these medicines or foods that they are needing. But if I could broadcast into you the sulfur that cleans your liver and the zinc to make your erections perfection, and we have good fertility, and we have, good thyroid hormones, we have a crisis in the planet. The fertility rate is plummeting. The sperm count has dropped 40%. There's literally so many pesticides made of xenoestrogens that it's changing the sex ratio on our population. We have been eating hormones that affect our flora in our injected meats and various different foods. We've now got graphene in our food chain. We got to figure out, really, in a nutshell, in a hurry, how we can give consent back to the individual by them saying, I'll take responsibility for me. And that's going to lower the healthcare budget on the rest of the people. It's going to help the doctors not be always dealing with the terrible end stage diseases of stage 4 cancer. Let's nip it in the bud.
Absolutely.
Let's work on that food poisoning that stops high blood pressure, or the tapeworm that causes diabetes, before you're on a lifetime of $100 injection of insulin every month, or more money than that. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that pharmaceutical medicine is bad. Hear me loudly. Sometimes I need an antibiotic. If somebody's got, a brain abscess, I'm going to take the allopathic medicine sometimes. However, a lot of allopathic medicines cannot reach inside bones and hollow organs, right? They're just full of air. So that's where a magnetic field therapy, this is like a Tesla coil. This is a speaker that's a subwoofer, and it blows energy right into your brain and hollow organs and neutralizes things that otherwise modern allopathic medicine cannot reach. So we really have to get humble and realize we're moving, as Ash has really been humble in his presentation. I feel that he's holding back the reins because he knows just how huge this is, but yet he's delivering it to the audience at a drip feed so that we can absorb these massive tenfold changes in our strategies. And I'm thinking that the music and the medicine and the bioenergetic ONPASSIVE delivery system are kind of going neck and neck, that we're going to follow this ascending positive timeline now. And it's not going to be all at once, but honestly, what else have you got to do while you're waiting?
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Drake, our time is up. But
Well, that went quick.
I know, what a great show this was. It was just over the top. And, I always usually say on the show that, Ash said at one point, he says, I may not be able to change the world, but I can change somebody's world.
One person at a time.
One person. And then I come out with a quote that said, hey, ONPASSIVE is changing the world one person at a time. And it started with Ash Mafaro. So it's up to us. Do we want to be a world game changer? I do.
I do
Do I
too.
want to help change the world? I know you do. And as one by one we get into that and we start believing that, and I believe that nothing is going to be like it was. It's all going to be different. Whatever you think about financials, or whatever you think about the way we do things, or whatever, none of that's going to be the same, because this is a new wave that's coming in. And if we all ride with it, man, we can all get to the top. And the thing of it is I don't want to be successful by myself. I want to, if I see my buddy standing back there and he's hurting, doing something, I want to reach back. I want to grab him. I want to pull him up with me, help him out.
Absolutely.
And that's what this is all about. So do you have a couple minutes of closing remarks?
Well, I think you hit really the nail on the head right there. Caring is sharing. If you can see one and then do one and teach one to somebody else, you've bettered at least one other life.
Yeah.
And that can multiply 1 penny to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, and on we go. So I've pulled myself back and said, okay, I can't get out to the big crowd until I get to the one. So if ONPASSIVE can help me one, and I change one person into another coach, and they see one, do one, teach one. And so I think your orchard tree, I think you and I should write an album called the Orange Orchard of, the Orange Orchard.
Yeah.
And, a jam session on all the keys of life.
Yeah.
And pumping it in with a biofeedback practitioner's, software system that's pumping up the background music with love, positivity. And these are possible, folks. I'm not just saying this. This is digital physics, transmission, absolutely incredible fingerprinting of the molecules of life. And yourself, you feel great at the beach with a nice meal and a beautiful sunset and love on your arm. And that's what I'm trying to create for everybody that wants to feel the highest vibration of human development. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying to be I'm trying to be a game changer for positivity.
I love it. And how cool would it be? I just thought of this. How cool would it be that instead of these kids going to bed and listening to some of this rap, or some of these games that they play where they're shooting people and stuff, how cool would it be that parents put on their headphones some of this positive stuff that brings good stuff to them, just like you said about the little boy, that all of a sudden now he's respectful, he's this, he's that. Can you imagine how that's going to change the world?
I can't wait. I'm putting out a challenge as a gauntlet tonight. I'm asking Collins to help me build a game, the Health Safari game, where you got to work your way up to the top of the mountain. And let's reward them like they're playing sports and Wii games. Let's do the health game, and let's reward people and see if we can figure out how they can help themselves and use that money to build scholarships or, facilities. It could be pretty amazing. And remember, I've already survived on a can of tuna with nothing. So I don't need to be rich. I don't need that anymore. I figured out how to survive with nothing. So now I'm actually free to do everything.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful thing. And if we could get Colin and some of these guys to build these games that kids could grow up doing, all of a sudden it takes and it reverses what they're doing now. Because I believe that a lot of the games, actually help create some of these things that we got going on in society, and what if we get to them early and we start with this good stuff? Can you imagine how it's going to change the world? Well, hey, listen, we are out of time, but thank you so much for coming on the ONPASSIVE Milo show today.
My pleasure, Milo. You're the best.
It was a pleasure being here and talking with you. So I'm going to say good night from Nashville.
Good night, Nashville. Good night.
All right. I think you're from Toronto, right? Good night from Toronto.
We'll say good night to the whole world tonight through ONPASSIVE's global outreach.
There you go. So thank you so much. This show will air, I don't know, in a couple days or so. ONPASSIVE Milo show is here today. You don't want to miss a single word they say. Bringing you founders from the